And you're on. How are you?
Howdy. Doing great, Garth. How are you today?
Tell me about you.
Yes. So, 43-year-old dude, I've got a beard. Not that's the most important thing about me, but that's one place to start. I've been married 21 years to a gal from Taylor, Arizona. We have 7 kids. We have 5 boys and 2 girls. So it's pretty wild and crazy. We've been through a lot, like any couple. We've built a couple houses. We lost one from a lawsuit that we pushed against the guy. We've been unemployed, we've been underemployed, we've been overemployed where we've worked too much. My wife had skin cancer a few years ago while she was pregnant, while we were selling a house, while we were moving in with my mother-in-law, while we were building our dream house. Like, just the craziest stuff happens. I had a really bad mountain bike accident 2 years ago. I almost died twice from that. But it's just great to be alive. Hard stuff happens and we grow and learn from it. I love motorcycles and going fast and adrenaline and caffeine, just like the next guy.
Manalizing men have beards. You'll notice that I'm short on hair.
Sure.
Tell me about that beard. What is that? I want to hear a story or two about that beard.
This beard won me 100 grand. How about that for a story introduction?
Yes.
In 2017, I had hernia surgery, bilateral carpal tunnel surgery, ear surgery, all in October, November. And then I was like most guys looking at January 1st, saying, I got to lose 30 or 40 pounds. And like yesterday, but I had all these injuries. And I remember holding my hands up and it was Jesus hands from that carpal tunnel. I was bruised here. And if you're listening, I'm holding up my hands on Zoom. But yeah, I had these surgeries and I couldn't even do a push up from a padded bench because of the surgery. And I joined a bodybuilding.com challenge that they used to have in their community. And about 3/4 of the way through, my wife does hair. She dyed my beard bodybuilding.com blue. And it put me on the map because they're like, what the heck? I was one of the first to ever have, if maybe the only one who ever has had a blue beard. But this beard put me on the radar with bodybuilding.com. They featured me on their social media that day. Part of my transformation is I had my daughter shave my beard. I went from being 40 pounds overweight to 5.5% body fat. Went from this hairy guy, I got spray tanned, paid for professional pictures to give me good shadow. But I ended up winning 100 grand from my beard. I always tell people, they're like, how do you grow a beard? And I'm like, you just give up on life. And they're like, what? Let it go, man. So that's introduction to the beard.
So we have a Manalizing podcast and a Manalizing men's group. And one of the things I'm noticing is that pretty much everybody but me has a beard.
Yeah.
Call me follically challenged.
We'll get you one of those Etsy embroidered beards. Those look pretty good.
I don't really care what your job is because we are not our job. I want to know about you. We asked guys if you could have any beard, what would it be? And that was a great way to have everybody introduce themselves. I chose a Gandalf, the gray. It goes down like 3 feet long and flows. It indicates that you got to be old, but I think I qualify there. Also indicates wisdom. And I don't have that, but at least I can fake it.
And I think that's true about men and their wisdom. A lot of guys, we break stuff in our lives and we think it means that we're not worthy or valuable, but that wisdom came at a price. So if we can change the way we think about all those mistakes, we can offer a lot of value. And that beard definitely represents that. That's pretty cool.
So now I'm still curious because I'm still a creature of broken traditions. Tell me about you. What do you do for a living? What inspires you? What's interesting to you?
What I do now for work is coaching men on their goals. One thing that lights me up is the show. There's a couple movies that I like to refer to, but one of those is the movie Hitch with Will Smith, where he plays the love doctor. He just teaches these nerdy guys how to be cool. And what he's really teaching them is how to be themselves. I love that approach. It might not be the best business model, but I don't do a lot of marketing. So a lot of my guys come from referrals. It's almost
Uh-huh.
like you got to know somebody to get to know Glenn, which is both good and bad and interesting. And of course, I was a typical guy that didn't really need therapy, even though the signs in my life would point that I could probably use some. I
We
saw
all
this
do.
show and I saw this movie and I was like, you know what? I like that they're making fun of Tony Robbins, but Jim Carrey's life really did change once he started saying yes to life. Helping men move through the different seasons of their life is really inspiring to me. Being a small part of their success, being that guy that believes in them when no one else does, even when they're not believing in themselves, it can be powerful to see men transform all because they have a little bit of support and see them transform all because they're saying what they're feeling. They're putting words to what they're thinking and what they're going through. And a lot of times men will hear themselves think and they'll say it out loud and they'll be like, this isn't really that big of a deal. I can handle this. And so just the mere act of giving voice to what we're thinking and feeling can help us empower and overcome what we're going through as men. In the context of who Glenn is, I believe in God. I rely on him daily. I love to be on, as Thomas Monson used to say, God's errand, meaning I love to receive inspiration, even the smallest things, and then take action and just be like, oh my gosh, I was in the right place at the right time. And this really small, insignificant thing is such a big deal to somebody or even to me. I love challenging myself and making progress. And with that comes a lot of introspection and asking myself a lot of difficult questions just to see, hey, why are you seeing life this way? What am I supposed to learn through this? And how can I manage my emotions around the facts of life versus where my brain wants to go with it? I guess we're all pretty interesting people once we can start giving a voice to it. But that's what I love to do is just help men progress and achieve their goals. It's pretty amazing.
Tell me about one of your favorite clients that you dealt with during your history. We probably got to be careful. We're not going to name any name, but his kinds of issues and how did you help him deal with that? And how did he help himself?
This is a fun question. I always try to meet men where they're at. Some men are really high performers already, and they're just looking for that little bit of an edge. And that can take some time. Then other men are feeling like they're just getting started. As men, we love to talk about money and building big dreams. One client that comes to mind in terms of money, he's a dentist by trade. And he came to me, he's like, I make 350,000 a year. And to most people, that's wow, how do you do that? That's amazing. He said, the reason I'm wanting to work with you is I want to work on my relationship with my wife and my teenage daughter. I just feel, I don't even know if he used this words, but he just felt disconnected. And then the second thing he said, he's like, Glenn, I weigh 176. I've always weighed 176. I just feel like skinny soft. I don't know, it'd be amazing if I could figure out how to put on a little bit of muscle. And then Garth, he dropped the bomb on me. I want a $500,000 raise at work.
Well,
And I asked, yeah, so going from 350 to 850 is not really the normal projection for a raise. And I just asked him, called his name. I'm like, bro, are you willing to leave your job? If the answer is no, at some point, he's absolutely. You must know your worth, like on the revenue line, what your efforts are worth. And he's, yeah, to the dollar. I think you might have something here. The relationship stuff, easy peasy. Putting on some muscle, losing a little bit of body fat, I can do that in my sleep. This money thing, though, bro, this is where all the pieces have to come in. I was just so excited. Another client had an HVAC business. He came to me too, and he's like, dude, I've always wanted to hire you. And I'm like, I'm not going to be on your payroll, but what do you have in mind? My big goal is to go from 2.7 million to 10. I don't know how to do it. And so just giving these audacious numbers, like we as men, we throw these numbers out and sometimes we really don't even know what they mean. And sometimes we know what they mean, but we don't know how to get there. And it's this coaching stuff really can be powerful if you're teed up. So going back to the dentist story, we worked for 6 months. He had an opportunity to speak in front of all the C-suite guys, all the investors, and that he was going to have an opportunity to completely represent his value to this organization that he belongs to. And it's really hard not to say the name, and I don't want to. I'll try to, like you said, let him keep his privacy because he is pretty private, to be honest. But nonetheless, 6 months, we get to that point. I'm like, hey, man, this is that point where all the work we've been putting in, all the conversations, all of the little things that we've planted with the CEO, the CFO, it's time to put this to practice. He prepared his speech. He knew they were going to offer him a raise. He just didn't know to what level. He goes into that meeting and they offered him like 250,000 just like that. He came to me and we mapped it out. I'm like, what are you going to say when they offer you a ton of money? And I'm like, you need to know where all these options are going to play out. Anyway, he came up with a narrative. I asked the questions and he just said his answer was, I need some time to think about this. And I'm like, perfect. That buys you time. So he came back to me. We ended up negotiating for 30 days. So a whole month of discomfort, uncomfortable conversations, showing up for himself. And at the end of the day, I kid you not, he got a $500,000 raise. He got his student loans paid off and he got a bonus structure built into that offer. Obviously, it came with performance based outcomes. It came out with him adding more responsibilities. I texted him the other day and he's doing what he's doing and it's crazy, audacious, and big and wild. His relationship with his wife did get better. Same with his teenage daughter. He actually didn't lose any weight, Garth, but he did drop 5% in body fat, put on about 6 pounds of muscle. And so his whole body composition changed. He competes in CrossFit now too. His whole life changed. What he learned through the process is how to show up for himself, how to communicate through uncomfortable conversations and not react and overreact based on what the decision makers were doing. He learned all kinds of things that will go with him forever in no matter what he does. The second example, for me, I've always wanted a guy there to be like my wingman. And so 5 or 6 years ago, I had clients calling me their wingman. And I'm like, that's cheesy, but I could probably get behind this. And I think as men, we always, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, I would love that brotherhood support where we're just doing crazy stuff together. And so when men invite me into that space to be like, hey, I'm going through this addiction, or hey, I'm actually going through a divorce, or hey, I cheated, my wife cheated, whatever they're going through, to be a trusted source like that is pretty amazing. And in the same breath, it's a big responsibility because now you're carrying those burdens with other men and you're really feeling the way they feel. And so to see a man step into that space and go for it is super inspiring. When he brings his problems to me, I have the benefit of then looking at my own life and being like, how am I showing up this way too? And so my marriage has transformed because I'm giving advice and I'm hearing what these men are saying. And then I'm using the tools in their lives. And then I get to hold up the mirror, Garth, and I get to be like, how am I showing up like this? And then I see it and then I get to progress. So it's like this ultimate giving tree where I get to see what it does. And then I get to look at myself and I get to get better. And then I see these men doing crazy things and they're going through the hardest stuff. And then when my hard stuff comes, I'm like, dude, just stick to the game plan. This always works out. So that's one of the biggest factors for sure.
So you've got hard happening for you, and I see a number of benefits for you. One is that other guys who have also dealt with hard, and that's a
Yeah,
so and not just you, because we all have hard, and we all think it's just us. Secondly,
yeah,
you do have a guy or 10 that you can go to lean on when things do get hard.
totally.
And then you have the confidence that, of course, you can solve it because you do that for mate's life.
I have a client, his name's Headshot Jordan on Instagram. He got blown up in Afghanistan. He's missing a leg. His right arm doesn't work. And it's been amazing and inspiring to watch him write a book and become a track coach and to become a public speaker. and do all these things that he was putting off until he was successful. And through coaching with me, he was able to be like, no, I'm doing this stuff now. And what was so crazy about my accident is I literally lost the use of my dominant hand. And now all of a sudden I'm like cutting my meat with this one-handed knife. And I'm living in a world that Jordan lives in. And I'm barely surviving in my head. And my value as a man is gone. I'm in bed for 6 months. And this dude did it for years. And I went to Jordan and I'm like, dude, I don't know how you do it, man. I am really struggling. I don't even want to be alive anymore. And he's like, dude, don't compare your heart to mine. Your heart is just as hard for you, even though my situation looks worse. It's hard for me. It's hard for you. Like you said, it's hard for everybody. And I think as men, if we can courageously share what we're going through, there's just this unique brotherhood where we gather strength off of each other.
How did you learn how to do that? Something I learned growing up. I've got a few years on you. But my generation is don't ever cry, don't ever show any emotion, don't be vulnerable because people will think you're weak and then they'll just avoid you. So I'm sure there was some of that as you were growing up. How did you get past?
100%.
Was there a switch, a moment where you're going, no, that's stupid, I'm not?
There was a light switch in the negative sense. When I was a teenager, I was just feeling too emotional.
With that happening, we're like one in a million, but of course it did happen.
So, coming back to how do we learn as men how to flip switches or be emotional without feeling weak? I remember feeling emotional about all kinds of things, whether it was me or watching other people. I would get this weird lump in my throat. Like it was just my body's response to feeling these emotions. But then being immature and undeveloped, I just didn't know what to do with it. So I just started shutting it down, suppressing it, resisting it, avoiding it, all the stuff that we as men do, whether we were taught that or we just don't like the way something feels. And so I ended up marrying this really dynamic gal. I call her elevated, which is a way to say she yells passionately. I really was not built for her when we got married. In fact, it got so hard at one point, I realized that Christmas Eve 2013, I had a gun in my hand. Months later, I realized I wanted to hurt myself so I could hurt her for how much I thought she was hurting me. Let's talk about a guy who doesn't want to divorce his wife, doesn't want to cheat on her, but knows he can't keep doing it the way he's doing it, all because he doesn't know how to handle his emotions. He's avoiding it that much that he wants to, I'm just going to be bold because this is a man show, put a gun to my head. And so when I say I've been to the depths of avoiding my emotions, like I'm right there with you guys. The switch never really came, but I will say it was a gradual introduction of tools, ideas, and knowledge, and then practice. An analogy that a lot of guys will relate to is the gym. If you've never stepped into a gym, unless you're total genetics, total athlete, it's going to take you 5 to 10 years to create something you're really proud of. What would you say to that? Gym results.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I was able to create some results in a couple of years, but
Yeah.
I am genetically gifted.
But it still took consistency and time, couple years, 5 years, 10 years, a whole lifetime. And what did you do? You walked into the gym 5, 6, 7 days a week for all of these years. You use your genetics, but you also use nutrition. You use anything that you can get your hands on to get the results that you felt good about. And I think we just got to bridge the gap to our marriages that way and our emotions, where it's like, hey, I know I'm obese emotionally. Like I keep having all these patterns repeat in my life where girls break up with me or they run away or my business partners screw me. What are the patterns in your life? And then it's okay, how do I take personal accountability for this? Where's the gap in my knowledge, skills, and practice? And then go do it. So the gym is a great example because it's like we can go in there with our pre-workout, with our beats per minute. What are we trying to get our heart rate to so we can target this goal or fat loss? What are the lifts and frequencies and rest pauses and superset, like whatever the term is, bro science or real science, that stuff gets results. If we could apply that same thinking to our emotions, then I promise you, you'll get so powerful and so comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. And as you practice sharing those things, you'll be like, ooh, I shared too much. I got to tone it back a little bit. I got to ask a few more questions before I just give myself to all these people because I don't like the way I feel. I don't like the way they responded. But that doesn't mean you never talk again. That just means you adjust and you pivot. Same thing with businesses, like how you hire and fire evolves as you become a seasoned business owner. And the only way to do that is to be like, dang, that employee screwed me over. I got to make some rules in my head around how I fire and how quick and all the
Analogy.
things.
I've been in places where I overshared and then I feel humiliated. That doesn't mean shut down. It's like in business, you hired the wrong guy. It's okay, get rid of that guy, or
Yeah.
you shut the business down.
No, some guy takes advantage of the time clock. So you're just going to shut down. No, but in our heads, we feel weak when we feel emotions. I think there's a big message that's been around for decades that men should never make decisions from emotion. And what I would submit to take that another layer deeper is as men, never make a decision from an emotional response that's negative. That doesn't mean you don't feel the negative emotions. That just means you don't take action from the emotion. There's a tool I use called the model that shows you how you think, creates how you feel, leads to what you do and what you don't do. Those are your actions. Actions always produce results. So, what's crazy is if I'm struggling as a man, it's like we call it the loser voice or the bitch voice, right? Where we're like, shut up and do it.
If it's authentic to you, then do it.
Okay. I grew up in the 80s and we would tell each other, don't be a pussy. That thought leads me to feel determined. That thought leads me to feel disciplined. That thought leads me to feel an emotion by which I will take action. So I'm facing something I don't know how to do. I'm scared. I'm nervous. I'm anxious. And then I say, don't be a pussy. And I'm like, oh, that triggers something in me to have courage. I'm not taking action from the doubt, but I'm also feeding my mind a negative thing where it's don't be a wuss, bro. Don't be a girl. Don't be this. Don't be that. And there's a more powerful way to get to determination, discipline, focus, clarity, courage. It's all in how we say it. As men, we think we're suppressing our emotions by, or we're dealing with them by not taking actions from emotions. The reality is we're always taking actions from emotions. Is it a positive one or a
Right.
negative one? If we can slow down, we can program it and lead to better outcomes.
Suppressing our emotions is something all of us men are good at. Something comes in that's negative. Maybe the wife comes in and screams, why didn't you
Yeah.
garbage can? Or why are my flowers not watered? Or maybe there's something at work where you didn't, whatever. And you take that home and you go, yeah, I'm not going to share that with my family because it's not their thing. And then you end up yelling at somebody anyway, or going off into the room and being silent or whatever. The family still pays. But as trash compactors, we tend to shut it down and think it will stay there, but it always seems to come out at the wrong time in the wrong place with the wrong people. Why is that? One thing that comes to mind is my nephew, Devin. But he talks about how there's been a couple times in his life where he's had a shotgun to his head. And for whatever reason,
By his own accord or someone else threatening him.
that was because of too many moments where he was the trash compactor and he was hating his life and he didn't want to be part of his life either.
Totally. I get it.
But, I was going to say we've all been there. That may not be true, but most of us have been there. I've been there. And I
Yeah.
heard a statistic that 3 out of 4 men have been there within the last month or two. In most of our lives, I think we've been there. You said you've been there. Why? What's your story?
The underlying thread is that I had never been a man before. I did not know what I was doing in that season. And because I had suppressed, resisted, avoided, and react to all the manhood emotions and situations I had been in by not processing them or dealing with them with real tools, I built a terrible fence, man. I just didn't know how to build a fence. I've never done this man stuff before. for that thinking came to me in my 30s, and it was programmed into me when my dad and I would get into fights. As best as I can remember, only one of them was mutually physical. My dad was physical with me as a kid. It just is what I grew up in. As I was becoming a man, I imagined two lions butting heads. I really wasn't ready to be a man, but I also wanted to be more of a man than what my dad was letting me. He had his rules. If I didn't follow those, I was being disrespectful. And obviously, we would butt heads and say things and just do our thing. The thing that came to me, my dad would come to me and he'd say, "Hey, Glenn, I've never been a dad before." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm the oldest. Like, of course he's going to suck at it once in a while." That was his way of introducing the apology. He would come in and we would make amends and kind of draw a fresh line in the sand relationally. And we'd start building that connection again. But he would say, "Glenn, I've never been a dad before." So in my 30s, I was struggling. And my subconscious, God, the spirit just said, "Glenn, you've never been a dude before. Of course, you're going to suck at a lot of these things, but that doesn't mean."
Dude before.
And it just gave me such compassion and mercy and space to be a screw up. And so when we have a gun to our heads or we're thinking about quitting, that's a powerful place to be like, "Dude, you've just never done this before. Who cares? You've never been married. You've never had 7 kids. You've never broken your neck in 3 places, your back, all your ribs, destroyed your left arm and almost died twice and had a pulmonary embolism. And you have a business and a $5,000 mortgage. So what are you going to do now?" "I've never done this before." So then it's okay. What are my tools? What are my support looking like? Do I have the ability to ask for help? Do I have the ability to receive help? I guarantee my pride's just as big as the next guy. I was literally drowning in Hawaii back in 2018. A boat went right by me and I wouldn't ask for help. I'm the epitome of an idiot who won't ask for help when I need it. Life has exposed me to myself and just said, "Dude, you've never been a man before and it's okay to ask for help." Does that
But,
make sense?
but isn't that typical of us to be literally or figuratively drowning? And a boat comes by and we're too proud to reach our hand up.
It literally happened to me in Hawaii. I could have yelled for help and I didn't. I almost drowned. I saw black dots. I feel like I had a choice to slip away pain free. And I started saying the F word. I'm like, "F no, I'm not dying in Hawaii." I was like one backstroke at a time. I couldn't breathe. Dude, I had nightmares for a year about this. It was bad. And I still wouldn't ask for help.
Yeah.
That's not the way to do it. That's
Not
not the way to do it. We're trying to change that.
not asking for help tends to result poorly, especially if you end up in a body bag in Hawaii and your family has to drag you back home. It's not a good outcome.
Or a gun in our hand, or we quit too soon on our health, our relationship, our business, our careers, our kids, because we don't know how to ask for help. There's so many consequences beyond the body bag. Anyway, it's just crazy.
It's the same thing. We all don't either can't or won't or don't ask for help. And that's what the Manalizing kingdom, great community is all about, is giving people, in my case, growing up, by growing up, I mean, getting to about 40 years old, I was doing a divorce and I went to a buddy. I hadn't talked to for 2 or 3 years. He was somebody I'd known from high school, the only person I could think of. He owned a glass shop. I showed up at his glass shop and he was installing glass and taking phone calls and he was busy. And I was in third or fourth place. I quickly realized that I couldn't get what I needed from him. So I made a lame excuse and left because I was leaving. I was like, if it ain't him, there's nobody else. This is way over my head and I'm drowning, but there is nobody. And I think we're all in that place until we change, until we're actually willing to raise our hand and say, "Hey, give me."
I broke my neck, almost died, blah, blah, blah. And we conceived baby number 7. Like the risk was worth the reward. Like I literally had a halo on him. And anyway, we were still conceiving babies through all this. But in the course of this accident, we have this baby. and she's just so cute, so innocent, and so pathetic. I had her on the bed one day, and I looked at her with just love, and I know pathetic's a terrible word, but I looked at her and I'm like, "Man, she's so pathetic." She literally can't even turn her head because of how weak and incapable she was, and I just connected with being pathetic because I was so broken for over a year, and I couldn't take care of myself. I couldn't even shower, let alone pay my bills, and then I rarely asked for anything, but I did a lot of prayers. At the end of the day, maybe there's a guy out there listening where it's like, can you be fathered by God? Can you turn your faith over to some higher source? My friends are imperfect. My dad's imperfect. My wife's imperfect. My support group. Is there somebody at the end of that? For me, it was God. And I felt so pathetic. And somehow I just knew if I didn't screw things up, make things worse, take stupid actions, that somehow it would all work out. I've had some crazy miracles that would say, yes, this is so wild that even at the end of the day, when there's nobody, there's still me and there's still God. And sometimes that's really hard, but that can be enough too.
And God maybe will send us a boat, but we still got to be willing to raise our hand and jump in it.
Oh my gosh, seriously. I've had a few boats come by and I'm like, no, even in the last year or two. And I realize now that I missed the boat on a few things. Like, oh, cool.
The boat being very literal in this case.
Yeah, totally crazy.
So, what was hard for you growing up? You said you fought with your dad a lot. Was he abusive?
I think what was hard, he pushed me around a little bit. He never left any marks or anything, but emotionally, if I look back now, I wouldn't count it as abusive, but as a kid, a little boy, and the feelings and the type of personality I had, of course, I had trauma where I had physiological responses to different situations, facial expressions, tones of voice. I don't know if you have kids, but you can give your kids that dad look and they know what that means. Like
Uh,
it means knock it off, or it means, hey, I'm serious this time, no more jokes. It means get your ass to bed, whatever it is. And yeah, I had all of that going on. The hardest thing as a kid for me personally was feeling all these feelings and then not knowing what to do with them. Scientifically, they say men's brains aren't fully developed till they're 25. So, what that means to me is that men are not capable of processing data, information, emotions until their brain matures. Now, they're saying with the introduction of cell phones, that is delaying development by at least 5 years. So, for you listeners out there, if you have a son, daughter, or your daughter is dating somebody and he's had a phone in his hand, if he's not 30 years old, he's going to still behave like a boy in many ways because he's underdeveloped. So I think the hardest part for me is the hardest part for every human. And that is you feel all these feelings as part of being a human and you don't know what to do with it. My childhood brain would think we don't have a lot of money. I don't get to do what I want to do. I have to work for a lot of what I want to do. But all those things were benefits and skills that came later. But as a kid, I just felt like there were a lot of things not available to me, and that was hard. You know what I mean?
yeah. And I definitely don't want to skip the part about where you were talking about you growing up and not a man. I want to ask you what being a man is. And I know that in my case, what I perceived as being a man was one thing, and what I learned being a man was extremely different. What is it?
Yeah. I think we have this recent, call it conversations from Jordan Peterson, where he says, become dangerous. We like the idea of being dangerous. We also like the idea of being stoic and composed. But I don't know if a lot of us really understand what true stoicism is. When we think of being a man, I think of providing, protecting, presiding, that traditional stuff. All those things are good and right and true. Obviously, There is an attack on masculinity and what do they call it? Down with the patriarchy. There is a huge argument that as men, we need to take a lot of that back. We need to take a stand for what masculinity is, but we need to see this as an invitation to be better. The path to being better is self awareness, self composure, but you don't get that self awareness by resisting and suppressing your emotions. We think that's what being stoic is, but we have men in the news who are having an argument and then murdering their wife, mother-in-law, and all their kids, and then killing themselves, like that down in Enoch 2 or 3 years ago. Remember that down by Cedar City? And I've been in those situations where all I see is red. That's the danger Jordan Peterson is talking about. The ability to do so much damage and pain, and yet you come back to yourself, become whole. You come home to who you are as a man by processing and realizing where you're at. If you cross that threshold as seeing red, you're going to break a lot of things. You're going to break yourself. You're going to break other people. And it's not that we're trying to not break, but we have definitely got to heal through it. And I have a picture I can show you in a second. So, coming back to your question, I think being a man today is all of these parts and pieces, but constantly improving, constantly looking ways for progress. And this isn't from a place of I'm never in, or I'm going to be happier once I'm over here. We could even bring in a little bit of Ed Milet where it's like blissful dissatisfaction, where you're happy, you're proud, fulfilled, but you're always looking for more progress. The key here, Garth, is that each season of manhood changes. I know that men are working towards retirement, getting their business to a certain threshold, starting a family, and these seasons of change that are going to expose you to parts of you that you don't know how to do yet. Luckily for us, life never sits still. Like you look at economics, banking, politics, that stuff is always moving. And then you come back into your little bubble and you're like, your wife has her health. She has her motherhood that she's doing. And maybe she has a business or a career. She's constantly changing. Your parents are getting older. You're at an age where you're coming around that corner where a lot of your friends are going to start having health problems. A lot of your friends, their parents are gone. And so what I'm trying to introduce to you is that we never really arrive. So if we never really arrive, part of being a man is being willing to change and adapt with the seasons, but do it in a way that we're in control, we're composed. And the only way to do that is if we're in tune with our thoughts and our feelings and we're seeing the negative and seeing how we can take control back and turn it into a positive.
You said when you were down for 6 months and you feel like you lost your manhood because you were incapable of earning a living, you were incapable of doing stuff.
Showering. Yeah.
And what did you learn from that? Why does being incapable of showering make you not a man? Or why did you feel that way then? Where are you at now? What's the difference?
I love this question because I think we hear this like $100 bill analogy, right? And we're like, take this brand new $100 bill. It's worth how much? And they're like $100. And it's, oh, let's crinkle it up, rub it in dirt, throw it through the machine, put it in diesel, whatever. And that dollar bill is still worth $100. I think as men, myself included, I don't really abide by this $100 thing. Like, I really do believe that my value is based on what I can do. So when everything seemingly was taken away and all I could do was literally just exist, it challenged everything that I believe about myself. Like, I ride motorcycles, I'm back on my Harley. But when I had my hand injury, I literally had so much nerve damage, my hand was crippled. You look at a strong guy who's won 100 grand because he could lift all this weight and do all these things. And now I literally can't even cut my food. And so what happened to me, man, is I just became completely broken. Now, all men are going to break, in my opinion. I was on my phone in my room. My father-in-law had poor health. I created a lot of bad habits by staying up late. I was afraid I was going to die in my sleep. So I literally stay up till 3 or 4, trying not to die, trying not to fall asleep. I created all these bad patterns and I was on my phone a lot because I had nothing else to do. And honestly, I was really lonely and afraid. And I found this image. This is a black and white piece of pottery. It's a bowl. It's
Yeah.
been broken, put back together with gold flake. It's called Kintsugi. But Kintsugi is Japanese art. And I know I had seen this before, but for some reason, laying there broken and worthless as a man, I just really connected with this. And I started reading about it. What's really cool about Kintsugi is the more fractures the piece has, once it's been restored, the more valuable it becomes. And so
Well,
I was like, huh,
that's
okay, so I can break things in my life. I can break myself. And if I will restore myself and grow the Gandalf beard, now all of a sudden those fractures have meaning and value. Not only does this piece have beauty, it's been restored into something the same but totally new, has so much more character and personality now. It's also more valuable. But the heart punch for me was now this piece is actually stronger. So you're telling me that if I can put myself back together, it's like share your mess and overcome it. That's your message. That's your value. That's your wisdom. So I'm a man completely broken. I cried every day for well over a year because of how much pain I was in, how much fear I had, how much value I had put into all the things that I could do. And I was just so relentlessly hard on myself. And then I see this piece and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my opportunity to overcome this. And if I'm doing a push up again and I look like a weird spider, I'm still doing push ups. Anyway, I don't know if that answers your question.
so let's take a look at Glenn sitting there in the bed, and it's month 5 out of 6 months. Yours. That's Glenn Lovelace. Let's take a look at it now, sitting there in your chair with your cool office stuff around you. That's Glenn Lovelace. Do the two guys have different values?
I don't think they have different values. The values I already had have just been challenged and I had to re-choose them and deepen them. I will say I've always been a kind, loving man, but now my capacity to be kind and loving is more than it was before. I think a lot of men have good nature. I think most men are good, powerful men. I don't know a lot about narcissism. I really want to study narcissism at some point. I would love to dive into how to help people who have that tendency. Even narcissists, I think they have their own best intentions, even though they're really challenging people to deal with. My values didn't change, they just deepened.
Same dude, even though the capacity to achieve is very different. And so your value is probably identical.
My value to be a man, serve others, and my capacity to overcome hard things on another level. So, yeah, it's hard not to be able to bench what I was benching and to hang on at fifth gear through the desert, not knowing what's coming next. Like a lot of that stuff is changing and it's hard because that's my identity. That's how I identify with myself.
It's our identification of our value as opposed to our value.
Yeah, that's a
A
great way to
question that
say. I
keeps
love
coming
that.
into my head, so I got to get it out.
Yeah.
It's one of those gotcha questions for liberals. The what is a woman thing, and liberals have a lot of trouble answering that question. It's a gotcha question, but I'm going to throw it at you. What is a man?
I think we're kind of going into the Ryan Mickler stuff where it's like you can be a male, but not be a man. It's like you can be a sperm donor and not be a man. In the context of being a man at its base level, it's your chromosome, it's your penis, it's higher testosterone, it's all the natural things of being a man, but that's more male attributes.
Right?
So when it comes to being a man, it's all those things we mentioned earlier with learning where your danger lies, learning what your capacities are and pushing those. Being a man is more about taking actions from love. It's taking actions from being meek and not weak. It's this patient virtue of being stoic and dangerous, being in tune with myself, where I am so confident to feel negative emotions that I actually go into situations to create discomfort. Like I had a really good talk with my best friend last week about how terrible of a friend we've both been to each other. I had a talk with my dad like a year ago, maybe it was 2 or 3 years ago. But I just said, "Dad, I don't need you to respond. I don't need you to apologize. I just need to be a voice for myself. But here's all the things that pissed me off over the years." And we went for a drive. We had a big gulp, and it was a conversation that needed to happen a long time ago, but at least it happened. A lot of men are not doing that
I give you the
because,
chance to clear the air with him and have a relationship with him again.
yeah, I think he respects me for that. I think he's maybe sad a little bit because he's, "Oh, I didn't realize I did that or had that much influence or impact on you." I think also he's, "Dude, I'm still your dad, and I still have intuition on what I think is best for you. You didn't have all of the pieces to the equation. I have bills, I have stress, I have a marriage, I have all these things, and that's life. We're doing it together. We're both
I
helping
love
each other."
his humility when he said, "Hey, I've never been a dad before." As humans, we all see our parents as a totally different kind of creature. We look at them and we just see parents, where
Yeah.
somebody else looks at those same people and they see humans. We expect our parents to do and be and say certain things, and there's a standard there that we expect from nobody else.
It's not fair to the parents, but I believe there is an argument to be made that as parents, say we're 50, 60 years old, there might be an opportunity for us in that age to go back to our kids and open the door and be like, "Hey, if you want to talk about that time I pushed you, or that time I picked you up by your ear, or whatever else that you're pissed at me for, then let's talk about it, and I'll own my part and I'll explain where I was coming from, and we'll heal this like trauma bullshit that everybody's falling victim to and blaming their parents and their religion and their community and politics." Dude, you have to address that. So, this little piece of pottery deal, I've been trying to write a book for 3 years. I just finished it. But the book is called Heal the Boy, Forge the Man. And it's this idea that we all have parts of us that are potentially unhealed. That doesn't mean you're not a man, but that just means that if you'll go into the cave, or some people call it shadow work, if you'll go in and really look at why you are the way you are and why you respond and suppress and do all these things, then you'll start to see, oh, here's some things that impacted me from my childhood when I didn't have a full processor on board. Like we said earlier, I'm not fully developed. So you perceive the world the way you did, and now you're getting the outcome that you're getting. So no wonder you have all this trauma. Let's find a space to talk about it. And that doesn't mean blame your dad because he was hard on you. It is what it is. What are you going to learn and do? And how are you going to be different? What do you want to do to be different?
There is the thing called extreme ownership.
Yeah, that's good.
We don't take responsibility for the problem, then we can't fix it. But let's go down another road quickly. Based on what you've told me thus far, I'm guessing that your low point in your life was that 6 months in bed where you felt useless, meaningless, incapable, not manly, not the provider. You probably felt like you were a parasite and not any value to society or family or yourself. Was that your lowest point?
Oh, I think it's tricky because we all have seasons of different lows. I remember moving as a 15-year-old. That was hard. I remember being on an LDS mission and having these crazy allergies and just being so alone. And what the hell am I doing out here? That was pretty tough. I remember being a newlywed, laying in bed on a Friday night, and my wife didn't want to be intimate. I'm just like, my friends are just getting started. And I'm like, what am I doing? I remember losing my first house and short selling and suing a guy for 4 years. That was freaking hard. I remember being at the top of my stairs one night. And for 10 years, I had this prayer like, God, just tell me what to do. And here I am working 3 jobs, 90 to 104 hours a week for 4 years because I was trying not to fail and make up for past mistakes. And I'm just like, I'm missing everything. Like, that was so hard. I remember trying to build this house during COVID, and I had to come up with 300 grand just to get into my house that I didn't have. I had to make peace with the worst case scenario. If I'm really being transparent, I've had everything I've worked hard towards threatened, and I get all of my escape and processing through my body, whether it's adrenaline or the gym. And all the ways that I process my life were seemingly taken away. And now I'm just left to just exist. So, yeah, as I'm like answering the question in real time, yeah, that's been the hardest thing so far. There was a point,
Bed thing.
except what's that?
The in the bed thing was the hardest thing in your life so far?
Yeah, I think so. And I had a point the September after my accident. I was standing in my closet, and I've had, I don't know if you call it suicide ideation, but I've only had that one time, Christmas Eve 2013, where I actually was physically going through it. The second time was the September after my accident. I was standing in my closet, my pistol sitting right there, and I just felt that buzz of like power and control of I can actually do something about this mess right now. And I was like, holy shit, there it is again. I'm like, okay, Glenn, you've been here before. Are you going to call somebody? Are you going to come have them take the guns out of the house? And I just took a couple breaths. I made peace with it again. I need to be really honest with myself right now. Is it time to call, or am I really going to be okay? And I just
Okay.
stayed for what felt like forever, but it was maybe 10 seconds. And I was like, I'm okay. But if I get back to this place again, I'm calling. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This has been hard, man. So hard.
Yeah. It sounds like you had plenty of moments of, and there was, didn't sound like there was one single thing that stood out. So I'm going to pick. And
Yeah.
I'm choosing between that 6 months, which have been super hard on me, feeling useless. And then the other one would be having to come up with 300 grand so that you could get into the house. That would be hard.
Yeah.
The easy question would be, the easy route would be to go to the laying on the bed. And how do you manage to turn those lemons into lemonade? That's the easy question. So I'm going to go with the harder one. Coming up with 300,000. I think most
Yeah.
of us would say, dude, you just built a house for somebody else. But you did that. And I'm sure that has blessed your life, and it's probably forged who you are now. You're a guy who can find $300,000 when you need to. What did that crisis do for you? How did it, that was hard, but it blessed your life.
Yeah.
Where did it become, where did that hard become a blessing for you?
Well, if I'm being truly transparent, I'm still trying to pay for the big house that I built 3 years ago while being half dead in a bed. So I'm still in the middle of the storm. We have a hard time talking about things we haven't conquered yet. But what I would say is let's go back into a very specific moment. This is a 22 by 25-foot office. It's a detached garage. I built this by myself while the house was being built. The frame, the roof, the stucco and brick I hired out. Nonetheless, this building was up, and the house is roughly 6,500 square feet. So you can imagine I'm the last house in this neighborhood being built. There was nowhere to push the dirt. The dirt was taller than my garage, this huge pile. I'm standing up there, and my loan officer, who was my friend's dad and he had helped me in the past, he's like, Glenn, your business hasn't been around long enough and you haven't made enough money. I can't even get you approved for the construction loan, let alone permanent financing. I was like, oh my gosh, I have this huge hole in the ground. The floor is put in, the foundation walls are up. I've got this half finished office. I'm living next door with my mother in law with 5 kids in a 3 bedroom basement apartment. My wife's doing hair across town. It's just all in. Let's go for it. and I had 170 grand or 80 grand from my previous house still. So I was self-funding up to this point, and I stood on top of this dirt pile and I said, "Glenn, let's make peace with the worst case scenario. The worst thing that could happen is this. Once you make peace with it, every time this comes up in the day when you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, stressed, bored, whatever it is, you can say, hey, I've already made peace with the worst thing and I've already made a plan for that too." So this is going to sound a little bit lame, but in my head, I'm homeless with a chunk of money and this huge hole in the ground. And I'm like, what's the worst thing that could happen? I'm going to have to move out of my mother-in-law. I'm going to have to rent somewhere. I'm going to have to put yellow tape around this huge hole in the ground and face my friends and family and be like, I thought I had this, but I don't make enough money. I lived through the embarrassment of what that would feel like. And then I was like, that's it. I have no debt. My lot is paid free and clear. My kids and everybody's happy and healthy. We're going to become renters again. That wasn't part of my plan. But when you're on the hook for a lot of money, it feels like the end of the world. And so I had to put things back into perspective. How did Glenn do it? I found a new loan officer and I said, hey, man, I need you to tell me exactly how much money I need to make in the next 3 months, and I'll go do it. This is what Napoleon Hill calls definiteness of purpose. If you guys can create a vision where it's all in, there's no plan B, you can reverse engineer a plan backwards and then show up 1 hour, 1 day at a time. You can do the impossible. I made 100 grand in 3 months. Guess what? I haven't been able to do it since, but I had a purpose and a reason. My back was against the wall. And I know so many men out there, they've had their backs against the wall and they just eke their way through it. It's holy cow. I can't believe I did that. So now once you have done that a couple of times, it's like, how do we encourage men to do that intentionally? Where they create a scenario where they're like, oh my gosh, I have to do this thing. And you can create that discomfort. The problem is, as men, we love our comforts. We love the comfortable lives that we've created from our hard work and being conservative and smart and making good choices that we have a hard time risking it. And so for those men, I say, let's go into the cave. Let's do some of this intrinsic work. Let's do some of this shadow work that isn't based on holes in the ground and how big your house is or how much money you can make. That money got used up. All my money was gone. The loan from the bank was maxed out and I still owed 140 grand to contractors. Crazy, right? So I had to come up with 140 grand. And I'll tell you what, I didn't make the money. I just went into debt. I put 35, 40 grand on credit cards. I had enough equity in my house because of how I built the house and what I did and what money I used. I had over 50% equity in this house, which is unfreaking believable, right? That I built a house during COVID where my cost went up 300 grand and I still had 50% equity. I negotiated, made conversations with contractors. I managed everything. And I went and got a home equity line of credit for basically 100 grand. I paid people off. The only reason I knew how to do that is because I built a house in 2007 and I got taken advantage of. I sued that guy for 4 years. Imagine what I learned through all of that. And now I'm building this dream house and I don't even have the money, but I'm able to talk. I'm able to negotiate. I'm able to go to the city. I'm able to move through all the obstacles and be like, what are the facts here? What's the worst thing that can happen? What am I going to do about it right now? How much do I need to make? Okay, let's go do that. Let's figure that out. And that's how I did it.
Yeah,
Does that make
that's where
sense?
I go with the question. What's your lowest point and why is it perhaps your greatest blessing? One of your low points was actually suing that guy for 4 years.
That's he was so good at the game. Yeah.
Because you had done that, because of the things that you learned from that, you were then able to build the dream house that you're in.
Yeah.
So that even that super sucky moment blessed your life. And
100%.
nobody wants to be taken advantage of. Nobody wants to go through court cases for 4 years. But it helped you. That reoccurring theme I keep seeing in men everywhere that life is gonna suck, but in many cases, as twisted as it seems, it can be divine guidance in helping us move forward to the next part.
Yeah, it's all this image. It's like, how many times can life break you? How many times can you get up and rebuild? And that's your value. That's your value. And value isn't the Kintsugi. This is actually my book cover. Kintsugi. I ordered this image off of Etsy, which is super cute of me, and it came from the UK. And this guy, I have 5 or 6,000 followers. I don't consider myself some big influencer, but this guy in the UK, he emails me. He's like, "Hey, are you that life coach that won that contest?" And I was like weird. I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Dude, I love your story. Like, I followed you a couple years ago." I was like, "Oh my gosh." Then I write this book called Heal the Boy, Forge the Man. It's taken me almost 3 years to write it, and I asked this guy, can I use your image as my book cover? Like, your image changed my life, bro. It gave me meaning behind all the brokenness that I am,
Well,
and it
this
gave
is
me
that,
value and strength.
yeah, that's meaningful to me too. This is that moment where I give you some time to plug whatever you want to plug. Maybe it's your website, maybe it's your book, whatever you want to plug. Go for it.
Yeah, my biggest plug is not even about me, you guys. It's about whoever's listening to this, that you guys can write your story and you can rewrite the past. And what I mean by that is exactly what Garth did with me today, where you find value in the past, where you screwed up, where the regrets are, where the fear is. I'm here to support men and help them be as good as they can be. If you want to network with me or be friends on social media, that's the easiest place. It's your wingman. GlennLovelace.com. You can read a little bit more about me. I have a podcast, One Day, One Life podcast. I do retreats and many Thursday night events, but I really try to support other groups, if I'm being honest, and bringing men into groups that are already in existence. That's what I just like doing that more. But yeah, I would
Well,
love to hear what your goals are, what you're going through, and cheer you on. So,
hopefully you have some guys find you. Speaking of which, how did I find you? Did I go through a big long list of individuals that I want to recruit and hunt you down and present to you? How did that moment happen?
yeah, no, I always love sharing the story of how I meet people. Garth and I were at an event through Silicon Slopes. Brandy Vega runs this organization called Promise to Live. I had met her because I went to an I Love You Bro project on a Saturday night in Pleasant Grove about 2 weeks ago. I'm talking with Brandy and I'm like, one of my buddies at the gym, Brandon, he's a therapist. I've helped him get his podcast started. He talks about you all the time, but he never introduces me. So I had to find you at this event. And then she said, you should come to my Silicon Slopes thing. I show up a little bit late, sit next to Garth. Garth slides me his little card and he's like, dude, we got to talk. Like, I don't know exactly what you said, but you're like, you seem cool. We should hang out. Like, essentially, we got to talking, and then maybe a week later, we're connecting here and stuff.
Yeah.
What was your memory of how we met, or is that
I
pretty
guess
close?
I basically just run into guys who I believe inspire me, who I think will be inspiring.
Yeah,
It's not like I go hunting for guys with great stories because I believe every man has a great story if we can get him to talk about it. And
yeah.
it just blows me away every time. We've all had hard, and the hard's different. Not.
I had a client during COVID who bought a bed and breakfast. He didn't know what he was doing, and we were both figuring out the economy and what to do. I was trying to support his new bed and breakfast, and I had 10 or 12 guys come out to this retreat. And one guy just randomly showed up on the last hour. Turns out he was going through a divorce. His wife completely went cold on him, wouldn't even talk to him. Maybe she had her rights and thinking behind that. But he showed up nonetheless. Another guy at that event told me afterwards that he sat in his driveway crying because he was so anxious about coming to a group of other successful men and not feeling successful. And all these guys had all these stories they had been through and overcome, stories in their head that really weren't true. Nonetheless, they were all going through hard things and we're hiking in Bryce Canyon. It was the last morning we were there. We're getting some shade, feeding some chipmunks. And I stood up and I just said, "Hey guys, like, I appreciate your support. This is some of the stuff I'm going through. And some of you are my clients, some of you are not. But I know all of you are going through things." Because I got up and I was vulnerable, I like to use it on a positive side. I was courageous and I shared a few things. And then a couple of my guys got courageous and they shared a few things. Everybody wanted to jump up and share a little bit. Not everybody did, but every man for that trip came up to me and they're like, "Man, I am so grateful that we had that last moment because I realized that my porn addiction is pretty normal, or my weaknesses are pretty normal. And that even though these men have successes that I don't have, they're all still going through a lot too." And yeah, I think every man has a story. Rewrite the meaning and the story behind the fractures and the brokenness and the regrets and the fears and the mistakes, that you're totally worthy to be on a podcast and to share it. If that's something you want to do, then do it. Show up. You and I showed up to that meeting. Those guys showed up to that retreat. Guys, we have to show up every day. But yeah, I love talking about men and how to help them. And guess what? I don't have all the answers, but I have tools that build some pretty cool stuff.
And you're the man. Thank you. I definitely appreciate your time and you're doing good things with me. And that's what I'm trying to do too.
Yeah, you're doing it.
Going to invite you and anybody who's listening to a Manalizing meeting when they can make it. And once again, thank you for what you do.
Thanks for letting me get fired up. I love being passionate about something. I think we have a lot on our shoulders, and so we got to get fired up and start fighting back a little bit. It would be fun to network or do a mutually beneficial Thursday night type thing where we get both of our networks together and add value back. Would that be of interest to you?
Yeah, I'm open to whatever you've got.
Cool. I'll support you the same, and I appreciate the microphone today. That was fun.
Okay, thanks, man.